This is Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. In each episode, we bring you information, insights, and ideas from some of the industry's top thought leaders. Connect with us to help pick the topic and guide the show.
This is Media Sales Mastery, the podcast for media sales professionals. I'm your host, Jamie Wood. Okay, our topic today, this one's going to be pretty cool. This is called Relationship Management Masterclass. Now, relationship management is something of a catch-all expression. It can mean many things to many people, but in the context of media sales, we often think of relationships as being quite one-dimensional. This is my perspective only, but things like I have a great relationship with that client are typically a phrase that you might hear somebody utter, meaning that we have a great rapport. But relationship management extends well beyond just getting along with the client or having a personal connection. It's actually a lot more all-encompassing than that. And it's really about being that connective tissue between your media publisher, your employer, and the client's business. Now, our guest today hails from beautiful Perth, Western Australia. It's one of my favourite cities in the world. It's John Dawson. Now, he's the advertising trainer from 7 West Media. He is absolutely the guy, the guru on this relationship management. So very pleased to jump in and have him on the podcast. A little bit of housekeeping. I won't drone on, but what I would say is that I'm looking to probably take a break over Christmas, but I am starting to do some planning and some preparation for next year's season of the podcast. So as always, hit me up on LinkedIn, reach out to me. Let me know any topics, let me know any challenges you're having. Even if you want to jump on a quick Zoom call with me and do a quick coaching session on a particular topic, just to help kind of break it out, I'm really happy to do that. Obviously, I always want it to be that you pick the topic, you guide the show, and then we deliver content that helps you out in your role. So LinkedIn is where you can reach me. Feel free to read my post, like, and connect. If you find me annoying on the podcast, you're going to find me really annoying on LinkedIn because I post all the time, and I am definitely somebody who puts out a hell of a lot of content. I'm all about the quantity over quality. That's my mantra when it comes to LinkedIn. Just kidding. Anyway, here we go.
The first 5.
John, welcome.
Hi, welcome. Thank you very much.
Mate, before we dive in, tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us about your background in media, and also interested to hear about your current role, which is relatively new, I believe.
Yes, it's very new. Well, firstly, thanks so much for inviting me on. And also, before that, I'd really like to say thank you for what you're doing and what you're putting out there and on this platform. I not only agree with how it's brilliant for people learning in their first 5 years coming into media sales, but I can honestly say, having been in the business for quite a long time, that I myself are learning so much. And so I can't thank you enough for what you're doing and putting out there to helping everybody out there in media sales. I've been working in media for just over 25 years. I've worked for 4 record companies, 3 TV networks, 2 radio stations, 2 digital companies, 2 advertising agencies, and 1 street press. And across that time, I've worked across multiple media platforms, client and agencies, and it's given me a really extensive understanding of the sales process and understanding it from a variety of perspectives. Across those jobs, I've had roles ranging from co-ord, sales exec, all the way up to head of product development, GBM, and a business director. I'm currently working at 7 West Media, and my title of my role is advertising trainer. I like to say to people that what I really do is I'm creating leaders. I'm inspiring and mentoring and coaching and training people to be the best that they can be. And I have to say, in all honesty, it's one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had. And I'm sure, as you know, to feel like you're helping people is just one of the greatest gifts.
I mean, absolutely, mate. And, our topic today is all around relationship management. It's a relationship management masterclass. And I know when you and I had originally connected and were discussing putting this kind of topic episode together, we agreed this one was a core principle of effective media sales, effective relationship management. It felt like it was kind of all-encompassing. But what in your definition, mate, is effective relationship management? And why is it so crucial to media sales professionals?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's one of the most important things in a business relation is, having those relationships and having great relationships. I know that in some quarters, what a kind of effective and relationship management is based around having a strong CRM structure and process, and that implementing that structure and process into your team is what it's all about. But for me, I'm kind of more old school. I kind of see that relationship management is really around connection. And, as human beings, we're social animals, and we're all about community and connection and relating to people and creating those relationships. And it's also about communication. Communication is a really big part of it, listening, understanding, so they can build and have stronger relationships. And when we talk about it being crucial to media sales, basically, if you're selling a service, you're really selling a relationship. And it's the quality of those relationships that are the significant difference in the marketplace. Whether you're working in TV and you're selling spots and dots, or you're in radio selling MAD, or impressions in digital, you're kind of all selling the same collateral. And you might be selling different collateral in that, you've got a stronger program than somebody else. However, at the end of the day, if you're in the same company, the difference between somebody who's making budget and somebody who isn't is often the relationships that they're having with their clients. And, having those strong relationships, it's high quality frontline relationships that basically drive high quality bottom line results. All things being equal, people want to do business with people that they know, that they like, and that they trust. I remember when I was working for a large record company, and we would have the national sales managers come over to Western Australia, and they would do their visits where they'd come and meet all the media, and they'd come and check out all the stores and to see how you were going and what it was looking like. And your job here was to trick up those stores so that when the national sales manager came in to check them out, that they basically were just covered in your product. And it was kind of really unrealistic. And I can remember thinking, this is ridiculous. Why would you do that? You're basically lying to them, because this is not reality. What you're showing them is not really what's happening week to week. And I remember having a chat to one of the national sales guys, and I said to him that same question, why are we doing this? I said, it's not real. And he said, well, the reason we do it is because we know that if we come here and all we see is our product, is that you have a great relationship with that client. And that means we're going to have great sales.
Wow, that's a really interesting insight. So it's more so about proving the depth and strength of the relationship that they'd accommodate that request. That's a really interesting take on that, mate. It's funny what you spoke about there before, which is all things being equal, the relationship, or people like to work with people they have a strong relationship with and that they know, like, and trust. And I know for anyone in the agency sales space in media, Media.eye is a big industry-wide sentiment survey in the Australian market, and Chris Winterburn, who will typically sort of lead that survey when he unpacks the results, he just consistently says, the main thing that drives the perception of a media business is the person sitting in front of the client. Like, beyond product or platform or pricing or resourcing or any of that stuff, it's almost all driven by the relationship that media salesperson has with their customer.
Absolutely. It really is the key. The difference between you making a sale and not making a sale often can be the relationship you have with that client.
I think it's a good setup for today's main topic, so let's jump in now.
Media Sales Mastery.
We're talking about relationship management. What are the foundations of a strong and productive client relationship?
The foundations of a really strong relationship are basically trust, integrity, and, like I said earlier, communication. So trust is obviously one of the most important things in a relationship, in any relationship. If you don't have trust, you don't really have a relationship. I always give an example of a situation where I had a client back in my TV days, an agency client who just signed a new housing client. And we've been promoting a new tentpole program that was going to launch our year off. And we've been promoting it really heavily. Anyway, he wanted to make a big statement. He wanted to show his client that, what he could do. And so he phones me up and he says, JD, I think that this program is going to be huge. I've seen how much you guys are promoting it. I really, I want to invest in it. I want to sponsor that show. I've got 150K. I want to put it into the show. Now, at that time, I was not confident of this show actually doing what it was going to do. Often, a lot of times when you over-promote something, it's because it's not that great. And the other reason was that I'd seen that show on other networks and it hadn't really worked before. Now, it probably wasn't the best thing to do as far as the company was concerned in making, that month budget and helping with that quarter. But I also knew that this client was the kind of client that if I promised him 10 tarps and I delivered him 9.9, he just wasn't happy. So I actually said to him, look, I am unconfident about this and I don't think this is going to work. And I wanted this to work for him, obviously, because I wanted his client to be happy and everybody to do well. So I'd said to him, look, I don't think you should put your money in here. I said, at the moment, and as kind of luck would have it, we had just launched a new channel that was doing really well with women 25-54. It was absolutely killing it on it. And a lot of the programming was kind of contextually relevant in that it was kind of home renovation, home fix-up programming. So I said to him, look, you would be way better to take a little bit of that money, invest it into this channel. I will look after you, but take the rest of your money and go and put it somewhere else. Like I said, probably wasn't the best thing as far as my company was concerned, but I'm all about building relationships, and it's about the long game. There's no point to win the battle to lose the war. Anyway, he says to me, okay, let me think about it. Phones me back a couple of days and goes, okay, I'm going to trust you. Here's 30K, put it into the channel and I'll use the rest of the money somewhere else. Anyway, we launched the program. 2 weeks into it being on the main channel, it's an absolute dog and ends up being moved to the multi-channels. So it was, while I was not happy that we've got a program that's not working, I was also happy that I wasn't caught in that situation where we'd done the wrong thing by the client. He phones me up and he's so happy and says to me, thank you so much for, doing what you're doing and being honest and upfront. Because of that, we built a really great relationship. He knew that I was not there just to take his money. I was there to actually help things, make sure that things worked. And our relationship grew and grew. And over time, we ended up taking lots of money from him because he knew that he could trust us and that I wouldn't do the wrong thing and I would grow as clients.
Probably commercially, you did do the right thing by the company because that short-term injection of 150K cash could have burnt that client relationship and caused them to not continue to invest with you over the long term. So I just wanted to call that out where maybe the decision you made in the short term may not have felt right, but probably long term it actually was the right call.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I said, to me, it's about building long-lasting, strong relationships and doing the right thing. I'm a strong believer in karma. If you do the right things happen. And, I often tell a story about a famous sumo wrestler called Chione Fuji, who is rated in the top 3 sumo wrestlers of all time. One of his sayings was that winning's about doing the right thing at the right time. If you do the right thing at the right time, winning's just what happens. And I say to my sales guys, it's the same thing. If you do the right thing at the right time for your customers and your clients, making budget is just what happens. When you focus on winning and you take your eye off the ball, and you're not then doing the right thing at the right time, you don't win. And it's the same thing if you're looking at your numbers too much and you're not focused on your client and doing the right thing at the right time, you just don't make budget.
So for a media sales professional who's maybe looking to establish a relationship with a client, like it could be a new outreach where they're trying to meet an advertiser for the first time, or it could just be early on in the relationship, what are some suggestions from you for getting things off on the right foot and setting the bedrock for a strong relationship?
I'd say listen, be authentic and to give. Lots of time, the listening is absolutely key, and you hear it in so many different things. And I've heard it often on your podcast where a lot of the guys that you talk to often talk about listening to be that key thing. They say we have 2 ears and 1 mouth and we should use it in that proportion. I don't know if you've read the book Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, where the main kind of tenet in that book is, men are problem solvers and women just want to be listened to and heard. I often say that salespeople are from Mars and clients are from Venus. salespeople, we're problem solvers, and clients really just want to be heard and understood. And when you do that and you listen properly, and you listen, to their whole being, their body language, their intonations, their tonal, and all those other visual cues to really hear about what's going on, you have a much better understanding. You can ask better questions, you can dig deeper, and you can help solve those problems. You need to be authentic because you need to be true to you, and you need to, I often say, you need to sell how best fits you and your personality. There's hard sell, there's soft sell, and there's a gamut of different sells in between. Now, I'm not hard sell. It doesn't suit my personality. I don't say that hard sell doesn't work, because I know some people that hard sell and they do really well. But it's about, being true to you and being honest, and also to give. Lots of times as salespeople, we often spend too much time looking at what we can get rather than what we can give. I talk about, dig the well before you're thirsty. Often going out to those clients and showing to clients that you care, finding out information in their categories that you can share. I remember there was a LinkedIn research piece that talked about clients being 5 times more willing to engage with sales professionals who sent them insights or research pieces around that were targeted or even general to their category. And often people don't realize that, it's the eighth to the 12th contact of a client that you'll make 80% of your sales in. So it's about reaching out and showing that you care, giving people information, insight, showing them some research, so that when you do need to sell to them, they realize they're much more willing and open to hear and listen to you and to trust you.
It's like any relationship, isn't it? They talk about the analogy of the emotional bank account. You've got to be making investments in people's emotional bank accounts, which is doing things that come from a place of giving and a genuine place where self-orientation doesn't come into it. And the idea is that you always want to be in credit with your emotional bank account rather than in debit or overdrawn, as we should say. What's interesting though, we're talking a lot about like relationships in the sense of like, here's how to build a really deep, meaningful, strong relationship. Here's how to get off on the right foot. Here's some ways to really establish trust. What about in this scenario? So where clients actually, maybe they set the parameters of a relationship early on. And what I mean by that is it okay sometimes, JD, like, can a client relationship be purely transactional? Are some clients actually just seeking that type of relationship from a media publisher? And if so, be keen to unpack that a bit.
Well, to the first point about do clients dictate their parameters, sometimes they can, but I don't think that makes for a balanced relationship. You need to both be able to be heard. And in any relationship where there's a dictator, someone's always not feeling empowered or in the right space. Is it okay to be transactional? Yeah, it's okay. My relationship with my bank is transactional, and it's okay, but it's not great. You can always move beyond that. I'll give an example. I remember when I was working at one of the TV networks, we had a canteen there, and people would just come in and they'd buy their food and have lunch and sit down. But I've always been quite a people person. I love just chatting to people and getting to know them. And I did that with the people behind the canteen, and I knew about their kids and about the sporting teams they liked and what they're doing on the weekend. And on Fridays, it used to be fish and chip day. And being Kiwi, I love my fish and chips. And I can remember sometimes I'd be embarrassed because I'd go in there and I'd get my fish and chips and I'd go and sit at the table, and I'd have sometimes 3-4 pieces of fish, and my plate would be overflowing with chips, and I love gravy and it'd be smothered in gravy. And I'd be sitting next to someone who's bought the same thing, and they'd have 1 piece of fish and a few chips. And even though to me, that's the difference between a transactional relationship and a genuine relationship.
That's a great one. I mean, you just made me think about something. There's some clients that I've come across in my time where they might present to be transactional. Like, a lot of the time we can very quickly say this client's just very price sensitive. They just want the best deal. They don't necessarily want any of the fluffy stuff. They seem to really want to kind of drive us down, basically. And I can remember having a bit of a moment of clarity a few years ago, just coaching a rep who was getting quite frustrated, just feeling like they were sort of the master-servant relationship. This client was just demanding all of these things, dictating all of these mandatories, and really holding this big budget over their head. And I can remember being a bit objective. I said, look, think of it from their perspective. You know, they happen to be in a very, very, very lean margin industry, right? Their business is not incredibly profitable. They have a very small profit margin. Therefore, acquiring new customers is absolutely critical to them, but acquiring them very, very efficiently. And therefore, they would be expecting to see their money work harder for them. So what that's manifesting as is them really being quite candid with you around what they need from a media transaction. But if you were to be able to reframe that, you need to show them you're delivering value, and you need to show them that you understand their trading environment and their context. And then you can actually reposition the relationship, and then you can reposition the proposition you're putting to them. So I think sometimes we can actually miss an opportunity, to your point, when we're not inquisitive and we're not coming from a place of maybe a bit of empathy. We can quite easily sort of group clients into different buckets and maybe just tend towards working with the clients that we feel we have that natural rapport with straight out the gates.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, I agree. Sometimes you need to think what's going on in their world that you don't know about. And, what's the pressures and stuff that they've got that you just have no clue that's happening in the background. I often think of that when I have somebody who's maybe a bit grumpy on the phone, or they're not the nicest. And I often think to myself, well, what's going on that I don't know about that could be making them go that way and taking it for granted? I always love that story. There's that Stephen Coventry story in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, when he talks about it's a quiet Sunday morning, and there's this train, and there's not many people in the train, and it pulls up to this hospital, and this father and his kids get on the train, and they sit down, and all of a sudden these kids are really noisy, and they're making a lot that's really cantankerous, and it's a cacophony of noise, and these people are looking, and they're disrupting everybody on this kind of early morning Sunday train. And one of the guys leans over to the father and says, do you think you can control your kids? And the father looks at him and says, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. He said, we've just come from the hospital, and my wife and their mothers just passed away, and I guess they don't know how to handle it either. And then all of a sudden you have this empathy and this understanding of what's going on, and the situation's completely different. And it's like, what can I do to help? And often those kind of things, even with clients and stuff, it's unless you have those little bits of information that can help you understand the full picture, you don't really know what's going on.
It's a really good call out, mate. I think one of the techniques that I've heard can really help with that, and you've got to be very careful with how you deploy it, but it's just labeling a situation. So, I've had many times where a client can be a bit short on an email, or short on a phone call, or they can be quite stern, or they can, in my opinion, maybe overreact if certain pieces of bad news come their way. And a lot of the time, just labeling it can be really handy. Just going, hey, look, you seem quite frustrated by this, right? And just letting it hang. It sounds to me like this has really upset you. Not asking a question, just kind of calling out what you're observing. And I've always found that to be a really interesting way of getting them to then elaborate. I've never used it and had somebody not actually divulge what's going on. So I think it's a really good call. It's really easy to sometimes just assign ill intent to people's behavior or tone or manner. The reality is, I don't think anybody, really no one, deliberately goes out of their way to be a prick. Genuinely, I don't think that's the case. So if somebody is acting in that kind of way, it's highly likely there is something else going on we're not aware of.
Absolutely. And generally, if people are like that consistently, well, that's just how they are. And then you just need to work a way that you can deal with that and build that relationship from there and not take it personally. Lots of times it's just not about taking offense.
Hey, this is Jamie. Thank you for listening to this podcast on client relationship management. If you want to go deeper into this topic, you should listen to another podcast we did around a very particular facet of relationship management, which is addressing poor client behavior, something that is very rarely spoken about and very rarely practiced by media sales professionals. We had the master himself, Nissa Malik from Paramount, join us. Here is a snippet of that episode.
call out that you recognize there's an issue by validating, like there's that you sense a tone or the frustration or body language, whatever it may be. Just call it out. I can see that you seem a little bit frustrated, right? Ask them why they see there is an issue or being a problem. Like, what is it? Then the biggest and most important steps are actively listen. Don't just try to hear them out and one-up them. Actively listen to their problem.
So there it was. That was titled Addressing Poor Client Behaviour. Have a search for it in the back catalogue. Give it a listen. It is a cracking episode. Very helpful, very anxiety relieving for a lot of people. Nissa Malik from Paramount. Connect with him on LinkedIn too. His LinkedIn will be in the show notes, and just genuinely a really, really good episode that I think we are going to start to unpack in future. Now, without any further delay, back to this episode. Where, in your observation, do client and media relationships typically sort of degrade or go awry? Like, what are some of the causal factors that might actually lead a relationship to start to become a little bit more dysfunctional or less collaborative or close?
I think it goes back to not adhering to the basics, those basics of trust, integrity, and communication, where you're not doing what you said you were going to do. You're not communicating properly. You're not getting back to people when they need things. Or, one of the things that I implemented a long time ago, and that was brought to me, and I thought was a really great technique, and that was stop, start, continue. And I used to use this with both with my clients. I'd use it with my own my own sales team, and also even with my own superiors and stuff. And I'd ask them, what should I stop, start, and continue? Because you need that feedback for you to understand and learn and get better. I never forget, I was doing this with my sales team one time, and I'd said, what should I start, stop, continue? And one of the guys said, well, I think we should stop working back so late all the time. And I remember thinking, wow, it was really interesting because I'd be working back. 5:30 comes along and my team's still working, and I thought, I can't leave because I don't want, I'm their leader, and I don't want them to think I'm skiving off stuff. So I'll stay and I'll work back. And then they were working back, and they were actually working back because I was working back. And so I remember saying, okay, no, from now on, 5:30, that's it. We're out of here, and no excuses. But I do understand that, sometimes there's a project or there's something that has to be put in and you have to work back. But from that point of view, then I said to the guys, okay, if one of us has to work back, then we all work back. And I mean that we all work back to help that person. So that if they were going to be back and be working for an hour, we all stay back and do what we can to help, so that, we're all back for 15 or 20 minutes. Because it's about teamwork and about supporting each other.
The other challenge you have made is you're all based in Perth, and you've got a 2-hour time difference from the East Coast, where I imagine people are probably still sending you emails and asking for things and all that outside of core business hours, which I think would actually just be challenging to manage as well.
The really challenging thing is actually to Sydney and Melbourne, it's a 3-hour time difference. So, if you're at 9 o'clock in the morning, it's lunchtime in Sydney, and then at 2:30 your time, it's home time for a lot of the guys over there. So you've got a really small window of being able to actually communicate. And, I'm always of the mind, I like to get in front of people, and the best communication is face-to-face. Next best is, on the telephone, and then emails. I said anybody can say no on an email. It's a little bit harder on the telephone, and it's much harder again when you're doing it face-to-face.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's a good little sort of segue into the next question, which is that nobody can really manage a client relationship wholly and solely on their own. Now, they might be the contact point to the client, but there's still a team and an infrastructure and a support network behind them. What are some tips for establishing and nurturing relationships between other people in your business and the client or clients? So, your media sales professional, how do they start to plug in and connect different people in their business into the client's business to deepen that relationship between the two organizations?
I totally agree. They say that it takes a village to raise a child, and it definitely takes a team to look after a client. And it's really important that all members of that team have access to that client, and that client knows and has the trust of everybody in their team, because you can't have somebody who's the only person that's dealing with the client and they're away on holidays or they're sick, and then the client's got nobody that they can go to. I often have spoken to my teams, and I give the analogy that we're like a Formula One team, in the sense that, the cowards are the pit crew. They're the people in the back end. They're doing all the making sure that the tire pressure's right and the engine's working and it's all going. The sales exec is the driver, and your job is to drive around that racetrack as fast as you can and do it as efficiently and as effectively as you can. And then the manager, your job is basically to go to that next track and to organise everything that you need ahead of time, so that you've got everything in place, so that when your team arrives and the driver and your pit crew, that they're running at optimum, so that you can win that race. And you need to, I often think that it's really great to take your cowards and your sales execs along to meetings. Again, it's great for their development, to learn and watch, because you want people to grow and you want them to then move into those next roles. They're not going to do it if they don't get a chance to do that and to be in front of clients. And it's the same with lunches, to take them along to lunches, to get to know the client in a better setting. When I go to lunches with clients, I've never actually really gone there to sell. My main goal in taking a client to lunch, and I know there's no free lunches, but I like to build my relationship and get to know that client properly, and so that later on, when I do need to sell, when I do need to talk to them on the phone, when I do need to hook up for a meeting, I've got a stronger relationship and they know where I'm coming from, and the whole team knows that and can see that and are part of that.
Phenomenal piece of advice, mate. Let's jump into the listener question, because I'm pretty keen to hear your perspective on this one.
I can't ask my sales manager that.
Hey Jamie, I recently had a client meeting go badly. I was encouraged by my sales manager to bring a member of our promotions and marketing team along to a client meeting. I obliged, but this person doesn't have a lot of experience in front of clients, and she's very much focused on our brands, events and content rather than clients. As suspected, she made a few quite abrasive remarks in the client meeting, which I think really offended the client. I can smooth it over with the client, but do you have any advice for raising this with my manager so that she can provide that feedback to this person? And also, I'd love to avoid her coming out to future meetings with me.
That's a tough one, mate, and I've certainly been there, as I'm sure you have in any business with a content or marketing function. What's your initial thoughts reflecting on this one?
Okay, my initial thoughts would be, in the very beginning, what was the setup? What did you do with your colleague before the meeting? What was the meeting goals? Have you sat down and discussed what the goals were? Have you come up with an agenda so that you're both on the same page when you go out to that meeting? Have you briefed your colleague on your client's needs and what they're after and what they're looking for? Now, I'm probably a bit more old school in the sense of going to your manager to get them to talk to your colleague. I kind of think that it's best done by yourself first up. Also, did you debrief after that meeting? Because that's the best time to bring up those kind of things that you want to talk about and discuss. I would be upfront, lots of times use their sandwich method of telling them stuff that are good, give them feedback on things they could do better, and then finishing with something that's good. I also noticed in here that you said the person doesn't have a lot of experience. So you need to take that in, because haven't got a lot of experience. How can you help them gain more experience so that they can learn from that situation and that meeting so that they can get better? And also that last point about I'd love to avoid her coming out to future meetings. If we avoid all the things that we don't like doing, we never grow and we never get better. That's a fantastic opportunity for you to develop your leadership and your management skills for later on, to be able to talk to her and try and make her better and yourself better. I also get that, sometimes some people, it's a difficult thing and they can't do it, and you may need to tell your manager. But I honestly I would go to my manager first and ask for their advice on what they thought and how I could handle it to try and do it better, because you want to learn to do these things yourself.
Mate, I don't have a single point to add to that. I think that's brilliant. I was going to suggest probably the same thing as you, which is that the the actual meeting planning would have been what's critical here, and also being able to deliver that feedback in a very appropriate but timely fashion afterwards. And let's not forget, right, the discipline of media sales, a lot of people don't actually understand what's involved in it. I know, many people who work in other parts of a media business, they kind of see about 20% of what sales is. They see the internal, and they often see an empty sales floor because the people are out in market doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I think this one, to me, exactly what you said, it just presents as an opportunity to be able to have a really good, crucial conversation. And if you wanted this person to come to the meeting, there was clearly a reason why you thought that was a good idea. And there was clearly an outcome that you thought you were going to be able to generate. So to then kind of dismiss ever using this person again would be a real missed opportunity, I think, because clearly you thought they could add some value and would serve a great purpose. So maybe not deployed perfectly, but it certainly feels to me like this is one that's not terminal. It's one that could be fixed with some good communication.
Absolutely. Like we said, it's about, building trust, communication, and, that integrity of trying to do what's right.
Exactly, mate. Well, that draws us to a close, JD. Mate, I think we could talk about this topic forever. I know sometimes with this podcast we can get real tactical and we can get into very technical aspects, but I think covering off kind of the soft skills of media sales in this world where there isn't really a playbook for it, it's more of you have to go in and just kind of test and learn and iterate in real time. I think this was really valuable. I'd love to know, mate, from your perspective, and even just for anyone from your previous career, is there one piece of advice or one technique or one thing that you've seen used really well in this world of relationship management that you would really recommend that the sales professionals listening to this podcast take away and try to apply this week?
One of the keys is definitely around building strong relationships, is about authenticity and building that trust. Trust is really crucial in any relationship, and you do that by great communication, and great communication comes from, listening properly. It never ceases to amaze me how often salespeople, when they go out, that's the first thing they don't do. They spend the whole time trying to sell themselves rather than listening to the client. I often hear friends of mine that are girls that they say they'll go out on a first date and in lots of ways it's an interview, and the guys spend the whole time talking about themselves, and they come back and they say, he didn't ask me one thing about me. He didn't listen to anything that I said, and anytime I went to talk, he'd talk over the top of me. A great example of, trying to do better and be more successful in your dates and in any relationships is to really just stop and listen.
Phenomenal one. I've actually put something on LinkedIn about that too, which is nobody wants to hang around the person who talks about themselves. Like that's fun for about 3 minutes, and I think it's a really good way to kind of wrap this one all up, John. Mate, I'm going to put your LinkedIn in the show notes for people to connect with you. I'm sure the team at 7 West Media over there in WA are very, very well served having you as their trainer. And mate, I want to thank you just for making the time to be with us today and for your kind words about Media Sales Mastery. It's a real passion point of mine, and I just love hearing that it's connecting and resonating with people, all around the country and other parts around the world.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting. I actually sent an email out a while ago when I'd first heard about your podcast, even before we'd spoken, and I'd sent it out to the sales team to say, you should definitely tune in to listen to this because we can all learn something. And it was amazing the amount of responses I got back that said they were already listening to it and how great it was. So no, truly, thank you so much from all of us out there in media sales.
Thank you, JD. Appreciate it, mate.